Hello and welcome to GamesHack. This time around we're going to devote an entire show to Nintendo. That's right, we're going to take a look at the N64 this time.
That's exactly right, Dave. We are looking at the N64.
So Joe, why don't you tell us all about this system?
Sure. The Nintendo 64 was released in 1996 as a follow-up to the incredibly successful Super Nintendo. Unlike its competitors, the N64 featured no internal moving parts, greatly enhancing its reliability. It used cartridges for faster loading times when everyone else had moved to CDs. The system featured a 64-bit CPU running at 93.75 MHz, but with the 32-bit system bus. It eventually got an expansion pack which doubled the RAM to 8 MB, which only a few games required. It had a weird controller with 3 handles. It featured an analog stick and 4 C buttons as well as a Z trigger underneath the middle handle. When all was said and done, the N64 sold about 33 million units worldwide.
Joe, that was some great information, but probably nothing that people didn't know already. And I noticed you forgot about the 64 DD.
Oh man, come on Dave, that was released in Japan only. It used 64 megabyte magneto-optical discs to store its information and stuff like that. And you could do things with it like store your user-created tracks on games like F-Zero. It had what, maybe 9 release titles?
Yeah, see, I told you the Virtual Boy has a lot of games compared to other systems.
Yeah, whatever. Anyway, let's look at some real Nintendo 64 games.
Beetle Adventure Racing was quite a surprise for me. At first glance, I didn't think I was going to care at all for it, with the VW Beetle being the only car in the game. How fun could that be? Well, let me tell you that I really enjoyed this game and I still enjoy it today. The graphics have aged a little bit, but for the time it looked fairly lush. It's fast-paced and each track is loaded with multiple paths. There are so many different paths that you can't even take everyone within a single 3-lap race.
Yeah, and I'm always forgetting which shortcuts I've been through, and I want to go through them all.
Oh, tell me about it. Along the way, you can break cartons that give you points towards a continue or even a nitro boost. But the tracks are super long, so you better get comfy. An average 3-lap race is about 8 minutes long. The control of your car is very good and you'll get the hang of it after just a few races. There's some issues with the hit detection, but if you're good, it shouldn't be an issue. I really like the atmosphere of this game. Take for example this part of the track in Inferno Isle. It's a total ripoff of Jurassic Park with the T-Rex that breaks down the huge fence that's supposed to keep him inside. It's this kind of imagination that I really like.
A total ripoff, but with great imagination? Awesome.
You catch my drift. In my opinion, a must-have for your N64 collection.
F-Zero X is a fast-paced, futuristic racer and probably one of the better games for this system overall. Just like you'd expect, you pick your racer and your cup and off you go. Next thing you know, you're blazing through flat tracks, tunnels where you can go crazy spinning if you're not careful, as well as weird tube-like tracks.
Oh yeah, those tube tracks are crazy. I found it very hard to stay attached to this stupid track the whole time.
The control is pretty smooth, but you must press a combination of different buttons to attack, which is really weird. Plus, the downright bizarre shape of the N64 controller really doesn't help things. Still though, I have a lot of fun with this game despite its difficulty. The graphics are pretty plain with lots of fog and really next to no detail, but it does run at a constant 60 frames per second and that's really cool. The music is awesome, but unfortunately it's in mono. Also, the announcer's voice is kind of weird. The Super Nintendo version is still my favorite, and this one ranks number 3 behind the GameCube version. But if you have a Nintendo 64, you really ought to consider adding this one to your library.
Blast Corps is quite a fun game that has possibly the best storyline ever in a video game. A missile carrier is out of control and it's your job to clear a path for it using multiple types of construction vehicles and mech-style robots. If you don't clear a path, then it's kablamo, and the human race as we know it gets incinerated.
Yeah, I don't understand this. Why doesn't someone just shoot the tires?
Because this is a video game, Joe, and that would be a really short game. The control of all vehicles is pretty good, and it's fun just to drive around and smash everything even if it's not in the path of the missile carrier.
Yeah, wanton destruction is always such fun.
Luckily, the missile truck moves at a very slow pace, giving you enough time to clear the path or make a bridge for it to go over or whatever you need to do. Graphically, the game is pretty average and the music isn't very good. The voices can also be super repetitive, but I'm usually having too much fun with the game to really care. I had a really good time with this game, and I think you would too. Another good game by Rare before Microsoft ran them into the ground.
Nice work.
Multi-Racing Championship, or MRC, is an arcade-like rally racing game. I used to really enjoy this one back in the day, but looking at it now, it hasn't aged well. The graphics are so blurry that they hurt my eyes, but I really did enjoy the arcade-like experience a long time ago. The co-driver always seemed so concerned.
Oh, no! 7. Come on, you've got to do better, or we won't make it in time. 4.
And damn, this game is tough. I can't even get anywhere in the game, and I don't know if I did back in the 90s. But this was the first game I ever played with a rumble pack, so probably not, since I don't think you can save with a rumble pack in place.
Actually, Joe, certain games will allow you to switch out controller packs for rumble packs, so you can save and have rumble. It was a chore, but it could be done.
Oh, well, you would know, I guess, since you're the fanboy. Anyway, the rumble feature is probably why I enjoyed it so much back then, because it was just so new and different. But nowadays, I might suggest approaching this one with caution.
Don't give up yet. Go on, pass them all. Give it everything you've got. You're coming up to a port soon. Get point. What are you doing? Get a move on.
Diddy Kong Racing was a mascot kart racer trying to cash in on Mario Kart 64's popularity. And you know, this one is pretty good. You can choose from all of your favorite rare characters like Timber and Drumstick.
I was so happy when I saw they made it in the game.
Yeah, me too. You can't leave such popular characters out. Anyway, the game was pretty much like your typical kart racer, except there was a built-in hub world like Super Mario 64 has. You earn a balloon when you win a race, and you need a certain number of balloons to unlock certain races.
I love balloons.
Yeah, that's nice. Not only do you race in a kart, but many races put you in a hovercraft or even a plane.
I like that you can race in different vehicles, and the tracks are all designed really well for each type of craft.
Yeah, once you win a race in a certain section, you can even race the boss. All in all, the game plays well and keeps you coming back for more. The graphics are very colorful for a Nintendo 64 game, and there's not a lot of fog or drawing. Rare definitely needs to be commended for that. The music is pretty much what you'd expect for something like this. Overall, it's a great kart racer.
I agree with this, and it's still enjoyable to play. Wow, Joe, we sure seem to be talking about a lot of racing games.
Yeah, so the N64 has a lot of good racing games. Who cares? Shall we continue?
Yeah, we should. Wave Race 64 is one of my favorite games for the system.
Oh, mine too, definitely.
It was something new, as I'd never played a racing game with jet skis before.
Yeah, I never played the original Game Boy version either.
Anyways, there was something about how the jet ski controlled and the water physics that just meshed together, making a perfect racing experience.
Maximum power!
The locales were all really nicely rendered with lots of atmosphere. The track design was great. Not only did you have to beat your opponents, but you had to follow a specific track outlined by different colored buoys. If you miss more than 5 of these, the race is over. It made for some really close races on harder levels.
Yeah, it can get pretty intense at times, and it almost feels like I'm really controlling something bouncing on water. There was a Rumble Pack version of this game released only in Japan, which added to this feeling even more.
The best way to win is to customize the controls of your jet ski. You'll definitely notice the differences in handling after you tweak some of the settings. Also included with this game is a fun stunt mode. In this mode, you make one lap around any of the courses and try to get as many points as you can by pulling tricks off of jumps and consecutively passing rings. The music in this game is really good for the action.
Oh! You did it!
This is a must-have for any N64 collection.
Absolutely, it's actually my favorite game for the system. Star Soldier Vanishing Earth attempted to follow up the popular Star Soldier series on the NES and the TurboGrafx 16. The first thing you'll notice is that instead of being an overhead shooter, you're now at an angle. Since the Nintendo 64 could do polygons and all that stuff, hardly anyone wanted to make strictly 2D games. And that's a shame, as this game looks and plays more like a poor man's Raystorm than the Star Soldier game. I am happy to report that the game does get more enjoyable in the upper levels, but it never really becomes much above average at any point. It does have the 2 and 5 minute modes where you try to get as high of a score as possible, but that's really as close to a Star Soldier game as it comes. The graphics and music aren't as cool as the older games either.
Yeah, I hate to say it, I did not like this game at all. It felt very basic and just boring. The game had no atmosphere to it, so you felt like you were just going through the motions, almost like it was actual work and not play.
Overall, it's a mediocre effort that I initially had some high expectations for.
Kirby makes his N64 appearance in Kirby 64, The Crystal Shards. As you may know, I'm a huge Kirby fan, so I was really looking forward to this one when it came out. Firstly, as you can see, Kirby is now a polygon and plays on a mix of 2D and 2.5D planes. A lot of this game, I felt that it was imitating the first Klonoa game in the way that you progress through the levels and also how the game looks and feels. But it's still Kirby, as you can steal your enemies' powers. Kirby 64 adds a little bit by letting you combine 2 enemy powers to make a new type of power. This aspect is really fun, as there are quite a few combinations you can make.
Oh come on Dave, I know how you really feel about the rest of this game. This is not your favorite Kirby game, is it?
Sadly, no. The whole game moves at a fairly slow pace, which can be mind-numbing at times. And overall, there really isn't a lot of challenge to this game. Some of the mid-bosses are ridiculous, as they just sit there waiting for you to kill them and they don't even defend themselves. The end-level bosses are a bit tougher, but you can still beat them on your first try. The music is also a mixed bag. It has some traditional Kirby mainstay themes that I really like and a few that I hadn't heard before but wasn't really impressed by. Overall, it's a fair game, but probably the weakest game in the Kirby franchise. Banjo-Kazooie is one of the better Mario 64 clones available for the system. It takes what Mario has done and adds enough extra content to make it feel unique. You collect music notes, skulls, puzzle pieces, and much more. There is a nice variety of levels and I really like their design. The music has some decent melodies, but for the most part it's pretty simple and not hugely enjoyable. The game does have some camera issues and you will be annoyed at times, but it's not unplayable by any means.
You know, the Banjo character never really appealed to me, so I didn't bother with this game, but from what I'm seeing here, it looks like I missed some pretty good gameplay.
I really liked all aspects of this game. I found it very satisfying just wandering around, finding areas and items that open up new paths. Definitely a great game for the N64. A sequel called Banjo-Tooie was released 2 years later.
Super Mario 64 is an N64 mainstay. It was launched with the system and was a revolutionary title at the time in that it was one of the first fully 3D games, so to speak. You could explore almost anywhere. Everyone knows how this game plays by now, so it's not really necessary to discuss this in depth. However, it was a fantastic game for the time and it still is today.
A truly great first romp in 3D for Mario. I never had any problems with the platforming in this game like you have in a lot of other 3D games of the time and even some games today. I love the whole atmosphere of Peach's castle and finding all the secrets. I played this game for all it was worth back then. Lots of great memories.
Everyone also knows about The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time. Personally, I kinda got bored with this one as it didn't excite me as much as Link to the Past on the Super Nintendo did, but everyone else seems to really love this game.
I agree with you on this one, Joe. It's not as good as A Link to the Past. But unlike you, I wasn't bored at all by it.
It was followed up by Majora's Mask, which required the RAM expansion thingy.
I didn't care for this game at all. I didn't like the whole repeating 3 days gameplay. I didn't like all the masks in the game. It really just never hooked me, so I didn't play it much before I got bored of it. I applaud Nintendo's effort, but it wasn't for me. Alright, the N64 had some really great games, and you know what? We're not done yet.
That's right, so let's take a really quick look at some other Nintendo 64 games.
1080 Snowboarding is a great snowboarding game. It has some great runs, and the half-pipe battles always make you want to top the high score. Yoshi's Story is fun but very strange. Lots of weird sound effects by Yoshi and some strange platforming.
California Speed is an interesting and fun racing game. It's also one of the few N64 games with nearly CD quality music.
Castlevania 64 is a poor excuse for a Castlevania game. It only slightly feels like Castlevania. An internal clock can make the story and events different depending on what time of day you play. Castlevania Legacy of Darkness is a sequel and updated version of the first game. It cleans up the graphics a bit and adds some new levels, characters, and enemies.
Extreme G is a futuristic combat racer. It's fun in small doses, very small doses. That was followed up by Extreme G XG2. This one is so extreme that they had to make the graphics a lot more blurry just to fit all of the extreme into a single cartridge.
Mario Golf is a very addictive golf game. Set in locales all throughout the Mushroom Kingdom, is very colorful and has some solid golf action. Mario Tennis is another great game by Camelot. Great tennis action with everything Mario and company.
The Cruisin' series of racing games was pretty interesting. Cruisin' USA was a rough port of the arcade and kinda twitchy, but also kind of fun. Cruisin' World takes you out of the country but retains the twitchy control. My favorite was probably Cruisin' Exotica here. It's fun despite all of the fade-in and it controls very well.
Dr. Mario 64 is a port of an amazing puzzle game. One of my favorite puzzle games, and it has some really catchy music.
Now, for some reason, the Rush games are another well-known racing series. I've always thought San Francisco Rush was extremely mediocre, but I was used to Sega racing games, you see. Rush 2 is a Nintendo 64 exclusive game that takes you out of San Francisco. The blurry graphics and the boring gameplay even come along for the ride. San Francisco Rush 2049 takes place in the future where they were able to substantially improve the graphics. Unfortunately, they still couldn't fix the lacking gameplay. It's also on the Dreamcast.
Excite Bike 64 is a 3D sequel to Excite Bike. It has some good animation, control, and fun tracks. The music is lackluster.
Glover was really interesting when I first played it, though it seemed to be a chore to play and the controls seemed overly convoluted, so I didn't get very far.
GoldenEye 007 is one of the best multiplayer games on the system. Can you get the golden gun? The single player mode was decent though. Killer Instinct Gold is a port of Killer Instinct 2. It suffers a bit because of the cartridge memory, but still a worthy game. Conker's Bad Fur Day is, dare I say, Rare's best game on the N64? I do. What a great platformer this is. Very humorous and a great looking game on this system. Very good multiplayer game also. This was remade for the Xbox.
Are you? I'll get it back.
Mario Kart 64 is a great installment in the series. It really shines in multiplayer mode. Mickey Speedway USA is a decent Mario Kart ripoff by Rare. It's colorful and controls really well, but it just doesn't have enough to make it that great.
Mischief Makers is a treasure game. It's cool because it's 2D, but since it's by Treasure, it's very gimmicky. I never really got into it.
Paper Mario 64 is a great RPG with the Mario cast. Some really neat ideas around the paper theme.
There were 3 Mario Party games on the 64. They had some fun multiplayer minigames if you're into that sort of thing.
Perfect Dark is a decent first-person shooter that would have been a lot more popular if it wasn't for GoldenEye. Pilot Wings 64 is a great sequel to Pilot Wings. A very enjoyable game with some really cool extras like Cannon Mode and Wingman Free Flight. Pokemon Snap is very strange indeed. You must take pictures of Pokemon and you get graded on all aspects of the photos you've taken. It's entertaining in small doses.
Ridge Racer 64 was actually programmed by Nintendo. It's not bad and it has the twitchy control that Ridge Racer is known for. You can even choose a car called the Ultra 64.
Sin and Punishment is a great third-person action game by Treasure. How they made such good use of the N64 controller I still can't understand.
Donkey Kong 64 is not Rare's finest effort on the system. It has kind of clunky controls and rather bland graphics.
Smash Bros is a great easy fighting game that will make any Nintendo fanboy happy with all its catering to the Nintendo world.
Star Wars Rogue Squadron was cool for a Star Wars game and it uses the expansion pack for higher resolution.
Star Fox 64 is a solid sequel to the original. It adds a few new vehicles and some decent multiplayer.
Harvest Moon 64 is a farming simulator. It's damn exciting stuff if that's what you're into.
Top Gear Rally is a decent rally game for the system. I used to really like this game, but it hasn't aged very well. Nice control, but there's not much entertainment value these days.
Top Gear Rally 2 tried to be a more realistic rally game. It also tried to be much less fun than the original.
Easy left. Hard right.
Top Gear Overdrive is like a poor man's Beetle Adventure Racing, complete with shortcuts. It's okay. Top Gear Hyperbike is pretty fun. It has some good music, but it doesn't look anywhere near as nice as Excitebike 64.
Wet Tricks is a fun puzzle game where you must build lakes to hold water. Pieces come fast and you must think quickly. Great fun, especially in multiplayer. Later released on the Dreamcast and PC.
Turok the Dinosaur Hunter was surprisingly enjoyable for me despite the immense fog and the ugly graphics. Turok 2 has better graphics, but it's definitely choppier. Turok 3 returns to some ugly graphics and it has smoother gameplay, but it's still not as fun for me as Turok 1.
The new Tetris is Tetris, but with nothing super special. It adds a few new aspects, but they aren't great. Some decent backgrounds are its best feature. Jet Force Gemini is fairly fun. It takes time to get used to the controls. The game is very linear, but the developers did a great job of making the levels look as lush as possible.
Wow, Dave, the N64 definitely had more stuff than I initially realized, you know?
Yeah, I know. It definitely does. You know, it's definitely not Nintendo's best system, but it's no slouch, and to a Sega fanboy like yourself, it might have more than you think.
You know, maybe so, maybe so.
Well, thanks for checking out our Nintendo 64 episode, and we will see you next time.